extremely grateful to James K. Johnson, the Dean of Arts and Humanities, and Dennis Malick, Kit Morris, Mike Watts, Sally Bach, and Robin Murray for going to the trouble to have me here. It's been a tremendous amount of complication, and it's all happening. I'm so glad to be here, and so dumbstruck to be able to talk to you in this astonishing facility. I feel humbled to be anywhere near this building. It's remarkable, and also somewhat challenged, having just come from a fascinating workshop on screenwriting from Craig Titley and Luke Ryan, who made the point very clearly that you really should never talk for more than about 5 lines at a time. Because we've all developed a kind of cinematic consciousness in a certain kind of way. Everything we experience is a tiny bit like a movie. And so this will be for you undoubtedly a profoundly boring movie, because I'm going to speak for about an hour, but there will be some clips in the middle. And I just want to warn you in advance, if you can't handle that, don't worry if you have to walk out. This is called Big Moments of Small Performance, the character acting of Joan Allen. The pleasure of watching narrative cinema is almost always taken for granted by audiences. It involves a complex negotiation on the viewer's part, just as much as on the filmmakers, regardless of whether the film in question is a simplistic cartoon from the early days of cinema, like Mickey's Follies, 1929, or a subtle contemporary evocation of the underside of political life, like The Contender. Watching a movie, we are always hard at work, trying not only to understand and appreciate the filmmaker's particular language of expression and to grasp the status and reality of the material being shown. Is it fantasy? Is it dream? Is it the banality of the everyday? Not only to recognize and respond to aesthetic features such as musicality, graphic design, and poetry, and to evaluate and enjoy the authenticity or exaggeration of performance, but also, especially if we know something about the way motion pictures are made, to acknowledge particular strategic and technical challenges that faced the production, and to study with fascination the ways in which they were met, often with supreme devotion and skill. This latter problem, the technical problem, is my focus today. What of a film was done that is supremely difficult to do for technical reasons? And through what applications of energy, skill, and concentration was success achieved? While one could address many technical manifestations of cinema, in script writing, in set and costume design, in lighting and camera usage, in directing, in producing, particularly interesting is screen performance, a feature of movies that lay viewers and professional critics have long treated as given, and an element further that is almost always attributed to the inherent strengths and weaknesses, the inherent sensitivity or dullness, the shining talent or hopeless incapacity of the actor as an individual source of emanation. To the actor, in short, as an expressive engine, rather than as a locus of technical skills and arrangements that involve other workers as well. My project here is to give very close focus to some particular screen performances so as to show that there is something more to screen acting than has met the public eye. Although it never sees as much as it hopes to, that public eye has had, as it were, a big mouth, more than ready with pronouncements, certifications, compliments, and critiques. The critical voice has taken to itself a license to rhapsodize publicly on all our behalves, and sometimes to gripe, as much or more about our esteemed subject at this conference, Joan Allen, as about actors in general these days. Reviewing Death Race in late August, for example, Roger Ebert called Allen a sublime actress and an ethereal beauty. While Peter Hartlaub of the San Francisco Chronicle, even more excited, was amazed by, quote, the most underrated actress of her generation, unquote, and Michael Sragow in Baltimore gave the nod to her usual ace instincts. In online reviews, Stephanie Zacharek complimented her for having the eyes of a lizard and the soul of a ballbuster, and James Berardinelli took note of her notable stature. For an example of the kind of vituperation critics can deliver on a moment's notice, however, consider Lawrence Topman, who found Death Race so stunningly tedious, he thought watching it at full attention might be damaging to his cerebral cortex, and therefore reverted while writing his review to the reptilian brain. Someone say she famous actress, but how can it be? Has stiff face like silly Botox woman. Looks bored through whole movie. Regarding earlier film performances, Allen has been widely adulated as, in alphabetical order, exquisitely subtle, fiery, formidable and flinty, gifted, just about perfect, precise, always convincing, reliably superb, serious, shrewd, stellar, substantial, subtle, and unexpectedly touching. A figure with porcelain reserve and trademark intelligence and dignity. But glorious or problematic, as in the case of Topman and the ubiquitous Charles Taylor, who I'm sorry to say doesn't tend to like Joan Allen on screen much at all, highly regarded or darkly frowned upon, Allen's screen performances are far more labor-intensive on her part than these quick impressionistic critical responses reveal. To see what it is that she does, and I would argue, does with such polish and accomplishment, it is necessary to go beyond the essentially superficial critical response to the structural issues involved in screen acting. Acting is, after all, a kind of work, and there are technical and professional aspects to doing it well. To be sure, pleasing the critics and gaining favorable publicity through their notices is an important part of that work, but only insofar as good reviews that attract audiences to the box office can be interpreted by production executives as collateral in future casting decisions, not because as they work to grow in their careers, actors can afford to actually believe what critics say in the way that so many film viewers, and of course the critics themselves, do, and shape their work in response. Partly because of her technical virtuosity, and partly because her screen roles have been so varied and interesting, Joan Allen is an especially appropriate subject for the student of screen acting. She gives an exemplary demonstration of skill in dramatic situations that are relatively easy to isolate and focus upon. As well, she has maintained a very private life. As Joan Allen, the person, and an almost invisible backstage life as Joan Allen, the actor, an occupation that profitably occupies some of the time of that person, with the result that her relatively modest off-screen personae, spied in a few talk show appearances and the like, have not cluttered and contaminated the frame of her screen performances in the way that we often find with more outspoken types who have sincerely devoted themselves to using television and the press as hydraulic venues for mounting acting careers, but whose personae in television and the press are thus often indistinguishable from what we see on screen. Joan Allen is basically available only through performance, her public face. Beyond that, she is quiet, even modest. That she hails from Northern Illinois, that she was presciently voted most likely to succeed in high school, that she has 2 sisters and a brother, that she was trained in Chicago at Steppenwolf and right here at Eastern Illinois University under the late Glendon Gabbard, that she is a dog lover, that she was married for 12 years to Peter Friedman and has a 14-year-old daughter, that she is the recipient of a Tony Award as well as a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Hamptons Film Festival, that she interacts with other professionals in order to mobilize the actor Joan Allen, whose name appears in credits and who underlies the many roles through which we've come to know her. For instance, that this morning she is shooting a film with Jeremy Irons in New Mexico, are all facts that tend not to intrude through publicity into the manifestations that we see on screen. She does not flavor her performances with a Hollywood reputation, as does one of her very favorite screen actors, Robert Downey Jr., nor are her performances flavored by public knowledge that Downey is one of her favorites. The comparatively short, technically delimited roles in which she's been presented on screen, received by us as performances, have had an exceptional purity in the case of Joan Allen. Purity simply in that they've stood without subsidiary or background comment from their source. Strictly speaking, Joan Allen is not a movie star, although it is in the movies that we tend to see her, and she certainly shines like a star. She is not a star in that a discrete and reproducible Joan Allen-ness is not part of her characterizations in the way that, for example, a discrete and reproducible Bette Midler-ness tends to glow through everything Bette Midler does, or a Candice Bergen-ness through the every screen appearance of Candice Bergen, or a Gwyneth Paltrow-ness through the many performances of Blythe Danner's talented daughter. No matter what the star does on screen, she is always to some degree, essentially and spectacularly herself, trading upon the, quote, monopoly upon a particular personality, unquote, that Janet Steiger argues she controls. Like many before her, Joan Allen is a character actor whose characters utterly replace her on screen. To this date, with two striking but also partial exceptions, John Mackenzie's When the Sky Falls and Rod Lurie's The Contender, both from 2000, she has played supporting, not leading roles. In Sky Falls, she is clearly the main protagonist, yet unless as fans or scholars we are focusing to find Joan Allen-ness on screen, it is the character, not the actor, that we remember in this relatively obscure Irish film. In The Contender, it could be argued, Gary Oldman, who produced the film, and Jeff Bridges, who played the key role of the President of the United States, had star billing, even though Allen's name is above the title, and her Lane Hansen, a sensitive and intelligent senator nominated to be vice president and thus run through the gauntlet of a Senate confirmation process, a kind of anti-prototype of Sarah Palin, was never away from the audience's eye as the central and eponymous character in the film. These two films, at any rate, are the only ones to date with Joan Allen that could reasonably be called Joan Allen vehicles, this ironically in view of the fact that her Legion fans, some of them professional critics, have such profound admiration for the quality of her work that they think of every film she is in as belonging wholly to her. For example, one writer fondly recalls a film critic friend who snoozed through Oliver Stone's Nixon, yet disciplined herself to wake up whenever Allen as Pat Nixon was on screen. In general, Allen's roles are relatively small and at best secondary in the overall structure of the films which contain them. To name just some, loyal but goofy Maddie Nagel in Francis Ford Coppola's Peggy Sue Got Married, and blind Reba McClane in Michael Mann's Manhunter, both 1986. Wonderful, wondrous, and wondering Vera Tucker in Coppola's Tucker, the Man in His Dream, 1988. Tender Bonnie Waitskin in Searching for Bobby Fischer by Steve Zalian, 1993. Brittle, tormented Pat Nixon for Oliver Stone, 1995. Morally passionate Elizabeth Proctor in Nicholas Heitner's The Crucible, 1996. Patient, supportive Dr. Eve Archer in John Woo's Face Off, and overstarched Ellie Hood in The Ice Storm by Ang Lee, both 1997. Ubermom Betty Parker in Gary Ross's Pleasantville, 1998. The Repressed Mother Anne Hamilton in Nick Cassavetes' The Notebook, 2004. And for Paul Greengrass, the bureaucratic ice princess Pam Landy in The Born Supremacy and the Born Ultimatum, 2004-2007. By Allen's own confession, the most difficult part she ever played. For a character actor, building a career such as the one evidenced by these roles involves certain professional strategies, as we can come to see if we examine the place of acting in the filmmaking process. In her penetrating 1950 ethnography of Hollywood movie making, Hollywood: The Dream Factory, a book that persists in having relevance today in many important ways, Hortense Powdermaker antedates much of what later scholars of performance, including Richard de Cordova, Richard Dyer, and James Nairmore, came to say about screen acting by describing a well-defined hierarchy of actors in which position is determined by income, and by observing that in order to produce and guarantee income, actors must find a way to get constant work in an environment where they do not typically control their own access to roles. A good actor, she writes, can be made by a strong role which offers potentialities for him to develop, or he can be embarrassed by a meaningless one. Further, quoting again, this role problem is exaggerated by the Hollywood emphasis on typecasting, unquote, in which once an actor accomplishes the creation of a character especially well, quote, it is then assumed that he can do nothing else, unquote. While gifted actors strongly object to doing the same role over and over again, nevertheless, writes Powdermaker, quote, the Hollywood system is not sympathetic to this point of view, and the actors have constantly to struggle against, unquote, an absolute power. In the days in which she was writing, that power was the studio. Now it is the big producer, the big agent, or the producer-agent combination, since film projects are generated by powerful individuals capable of assembling production teams which include character players contracted for limited but dramatically vital work. Character players are notable in their importance to Hollywood filmmaking since their presence in central but off-center narrative positions fleshes out the realism of the story while also providing star performers with the opportunity to simulate social density in their screen interactions. While success in screen acting can be attributable to one's looks and personality, as in the case of movie stars, such as Jeff Bridges, Kevin Kline, Nicolas Cage, Anthony Hopkins, John Travolta, and Matt Damon, with all of whom Allen has played on screen, Powdermaker emphasizes that most actors and directors agree that character actors are the most talented of all the players. An extended quote, these supporting players are chosen primarily for their ability, and there is keen competition for the jobs. Moreover, they must make good on their own, for everything on the set is not geared to their success. Cameraman, electrician, and director use most of their energy and time to getting the best results for the stars, and have little left for the others. Often the character actor playing a second lead is literally a supporting player. If the star is not gifted, he carries the real burden of the acting, and through the skillful manipulation of the camera, the star's lack of ability is at least partly concealed. The character actor could be described as a brassiere for the star, literally holding him or her up. The centrality of the star springs from his being a major investment of the production. This because it is believed that star performances are instrumental in guaranteeing the success or failure of a film at the box office. As Luke said upstairs half an hour ago, Tom Cruise could read the phone book and they would sell the film around the world. This feature of the star system of the golden days of Hollywood, 1933 through 1968, persists today in the face of stars' relative independence from studios and protective studio contracts. But character actors do not benefit from the same belief. For example, It was to see Hopkins embodying Richard Milhous Nixon that audiences spent $13.5 million at the box office, not to be engaged by Joan Allen's performance as his wife. And most recently, although her performance in it garnered excellent reviews, as I've mentioned, Paul W.S. Anderson's Death Race snagged $36 million at the box office, largely due to the promised star performance of British-born action performer Jason Statham. Screen character actors like Joan Allen face three central and interesting problems that I would like to look at now. With each of these problems, an actor who can manage to navigate the straits it presents and emerge triumphant has a real chance to build a career in movies, although it should be emphasized that a well-built career often does not mean a solid platform upon which one can bask in the sun easily and forever, but instead simply an opening up of opportunities for further competition and struggle in order to get a job. Given the absence now of the genre film assembly line of studio days and of the studio-owned stable of character players who repeated their work in film after film, there are few opportunities for character actors to indelibly etch a claim upon a type of role. Midler, Bergen, and Danner come to mind as exceptions of a sort. For the most part, any role written in such a way as to be perfect for only one person compromises a production, since the actor in question gains leverage for bargaining. Roles of the kind Joan Allen plays are therefore typically written so as to be open to a number of equally talented and equally hungry actors, each with an aggressive agent, sometimes many of them with the same aggressive agent, each with a manager, each with a publicity representative hungry to sell her name to the press in conjunction with a reputable film assignment. But regardless of competition and regardless of the fact that there are skilled character actors eager for work lining the walls of casting offices, the work itself, once an actor has secured it, has certain intrinsic challenges that Allen has met with a particularly sharp combination of intelligence and instinct. Condensation. The character player. Are we going to dim the lights every time there's a clip? Still? Okay. The character player is likely to have only a very few scenes, amounting to only, in total, to only minutes of screen time. For any one of these, the scripted character may be built swiftly and sure-handedly out of fragments that can last only a second or two in front of the camera. This is what small performance. And when it is done brilliantly, as Allen invariably manages, the performative moment has the character of a Barthesian punctum, one of those sensitive points, precisely, marks, wounds. Although the small performance occurs in a film as a kind of pricking point, materialized through brief flashes, sometimes through only one brief flash, it remains a seriously desired effect for actors and producers alike that audiences should remember that performance, sufficiently so for producers that viewers flock to theaters to see the characterization for its own sake, and for actors so that a consistent and lucrative career can be built upon the claim that viewers recognize the performer's work and value it for qualities that are long-lived in viewers' recognition, even if they're put on show in only a curtailed fashion. Think, for example, of Paul Dano's tour de force rendition of the insanely zealous young preacher in P.T. Anderson's There Will Be Blood, 2007. Or, for an even briefer performance, Clive Owen's killing CIA assassin to have a pound of Damon's flesh in the farm fields of southern France in Doug Liman's Born Identity, 2002. Further, in most shots involving character players, they are not centered scene, but instead choreographed with other supporting players or else left in a kind of penumbra that surrounds the star, a little less key light, often less focus. Or else they are positioned in shot-reverse shot interchanges of dialogue where their every appearance, fully in frame, gets weighed against a competitive and structurally stronger appearance from the star. Star Javier Bardem's shot-counter-shot conversation with character player Matthew Posey as a sporting goods salesman in the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men, 2007. Typically, the character actor must work generously and fulsomely in a tiny production space, brief shots, few shots overall, with only part of the character's being explored in any depth. And while doing this work, she is constantly faced with the requirement of not upstaging the star. This being true, by the way, whether or not the star performer or performers are on screen at the same time. In Oliver Stone's Nixon, for example, Pat Nixon must somehow seem to be directly in front of us or in the conscience of her husband, even when for one reason or another she's not in the same room. Yet at no point must the film itself ever seem to be anything but Richard Nixon's film. That is, a property whereby the labor of Anthony Hopkins is contracted, used, centralized, highlighted, and ultimately sold as a principal value, notwithstanding the fact that in the working relationship, Hopkins, the professional worker, claims no superiority and demands no privileges he would not share with his supporting player. As with Pat Nixon in this film, character parts in general must live with vivacity in tiny cages, like pets. Thus, without the care and skill of a consummate character actor like Joan Allen, the character part can look like nothing more than icing on a cake, pure decoration. Consider in this light how much Allen is able to accomplish with a simple twitch of the lip. In this singular moment from Nixon, after promising her that to save the family he will leave politics, her husband has rebounded with genuine and fresh optimism after the assassination of John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson's later announcement that he will not seek a second term. Nixon is back, but Pat, his closest confidant and bulwark of strength, his dependable companion, hasn't been told yet.
We got the presses, we got the big bowl, we're back.
So excited.
Can we up the volume a bit?
You trying to tell me?
Here we see genuine, direct responsiveness to a moment, and this makes the performance real, that is, shockingly spontaneous and apparently unconstructed. Painful chagrin and resignation are legible in her posture before she strides off, the dutiful, loyal, suffering wife betrayed by a husband's hungers, but also a woman who knew all along that for this husband the promise to abandon the political arena was one he could never keep. A woman whose love is so deep and so strong, she knows even the architecture of her partner's inner ruins. Her disgust at his betrayal must be played as a self-reproach directed against her own enabling, so that Nixon himself, sensing this, will know that the slow destruction of this woman, which we are here witnessing in microcosm, is one of the facts of life that cause his rot. When Nixon resigns, he collapses into his wife's embrace, knowing that by this moment, even she may be crumbling as well.
Oh, buddy. If I could just sleep. I could just sleep.
What's that?
Once, I'm sick as a boy. My mother gave me this stuff. Made me swallow it. Made me throw up all over. Wish I could do that now. I'm so afraid. I could always see where I was going. But it's dark out there. God, I've always been afraid of the dark.
Note here what Allen accomplishes. In a moment of acting, I should mention that she doesn't remember. With the placement of her hand on Hopkins and the hand's definitive stillness, and at the same time, what pain and extremity of effort are affected by the tension of her neck muscles. These are tiny modulations of character, achievable in the shortest time frame, and very pungent as cues to the character's feeling, understanding, and life condition at an important dramatic moment. As this very small moment is real, all the moments built around and upon it stand to gain in reality as well. The film takes on a three-dimensional quality. In The Notebook, Allen is a repressed and haughty mother in the mid-1940s, eager that her pretty daughter, Rachel McAdams, should marry for money instead of going off with the poor boy she passionately loves, Ryan Gosling. One night at a party, the right lad, James Marsden, pops the right question at a table beside the dance floor. Watch what Allen does at the moment of the great announcement, and how in a swift, explosive flash, in less than a second, she gives away a secret self.
One more thing. I love you. You marry him. I'm walking around all the time crazy about you.
Here is the sexual energy Mom has been holding in for a very long time, interwoven with her own perverted sense of possessiveness, as though the daughter's marriage is her own accomplishment, as though this is her moment. She swivels to face those around her with a glowing and triumphant smile, revealing a coiled springwork that could not be controlled, a buried mechanism. Mom is the hungry one, and also more bestial than we could have dreamed. She knows all too well the forces in her daughter that she has been stifling for too long. A later scene gives Allen a chance to confess the love she repressed long ago, and because of the performance in this early scene, it is an explanation we've been prepared for, and that therefore has not only surface meaning, but depth.
What are we doing, Mom? Do you see that video?
They look like a cowboy 25 years ago. Oh my goodness, he is you're out of my mind, you love. So actually, the grandfather's furious. He decided to run away. We make the next time we lose things. Sometimes when I'm in the area, stop here and watch it. Trying to picture how you could
I want you to know that I love your father. No goddamn, this is important. You need to hear it. I do. He is a wonderful man. He is good to me, and I don't deserve it. I love him, Ellie. I do. I love you.
very embarrassing. I'm a stupid woman.
get your bowl bag. Yeah.
The way she takes off those sunglasses and yet continues to squint all through the rest of the scene. Listening to the tone of her voice, its music, we can be stunned by the utterly unguarded admission that she's embarrassed, not as a mother can be, but as a girl can be when confessing an unholy passion fully and openly to an equal. These manifestations of character to which I hope I'm drawing your attention, the tiny twitch of the mouth, the hand on the husband's body, the taut neck muscles, the cheerleading arm wave, the pivot on the dance floor, the tone of voice directed away from the daughter, these are performative gestures. A performance gesture can be virtually any human action, but it must express a character's reality pungently and in what Nicholas Ray called an action, that is, not only here and now, but onward in a flow that brings resolution and vitiation of the impulse. For a delicious example of action played through, consider how in Rod Lury's The Contender, while sitting to lunch with the man who is preparing to excoriate her in a public hearing, Gary Oldman, Allen's Lane Hansen establishes tension, even revulsion, through a simple social responsiveness regarding the menu, but then suddenly reveals her deep knowledge of the adversary sitting across the table and full awareness of his malign intent by the artful yet also wholly natural placement of a rueful, self-reflective smile that completes the gesture.
Sorry. I ordered you quarter.
Oh, no, I don't need it. I'll just have the pen.
You should really try to save there. That's you could put it on that side.
I really don't need it. I'll just go ahead with the pen.
Our Will, boy.
Let's go with small talk today, shall we? And then we finish these.
Let the big talk begin.
Have you seen this?
My file on your side.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get it?
Have you read it?
How did you get it? Have you read it?
What do you have to say for yourself?
For the consummate character actor, the biggest gestures are almost always invariably very small. In When the Sky Falls, an independent Irish feature based on the true story of the reporter Veronica Guerin and her murder by criminal thugs as she persisted in investigating their activities in Dublin, there comes a delicious and important break from the main action at a moment of intense dramatic tension, a little scenic hiatus, when Allen's Sinead Hamilton is having a quiet little talk with her son Colm. As the two whisper together in a delicious moment of bonding, the boy notices a pencil stuck behind his mother's ear.
I'm writing on this report.
See the bug, Mom?
Mine drove too fast, just made it. Actually, just made it 6 minutes.
Thursday?
It's called we shoot scores.
I don't need money. Mommy, what's that? You have pants in your hair. Oh,
To tell the kid to take the pencil, Allen nods her head a little his way. What a beautiful gesture this is, and how profoundly revealing. It shows the affinity and long-standing intimacy between these two figures that such a tiny movement can easily be read for tenderness and meaning. Maternal love we can presume, given the scenes between them in the rest of the film, but affinity is something else. It betokens knowledge, pleasure, friendship, warmth, and the desire for closeness. Also hidden in that nod of the head is knowledge. Sinead's knowledge that Colm will respond. Her knowledge that he wants her to come close and is subtly asking her to. Soon after this moment, she is brutally murdered, and this nod of the head therefore lingers with us as a token of her genuine human warmth, that she breathed, that her heart beat. This little moment helps illustrate yet one more aspect of small performance, namely, that the character we come to know through its agency displays herself only in fragments and always to only a limited extent. The character actor typically plays a person we know only in part, or only superficially, a person whose life and reactions are not deeply explored by the narrative. In her brief moments of performance, the character actor must find a way to signal depths of experience and feeling that the script does not provide, so that the audience may be afforded the opportunity of believing in a full, vast, personal world that is being revealed only through attenuated and angled glimpses. There are very few actors, said Orson Welles to Peter Bogdanovich one day, who can make you believe they think. Not that they're thinking about what they're saying, but that they think outside of the scene. Joan Allen is one of these. It is through her ability to convince us that her characters think outside of their scenes that she gives us the space and the license to fill in their worlds more than the movie does for us otherwise. In John Woo's Face Off, she is the mother of a teenager, Dominique Swain, who has had a confrontation with her father, John Travolta.
I see.
Why do you believe me anyway?
Jenny, look, it's not easy, okay? I mean, look, you change the way you look every week and the way you act. Who are you supposed to be now?
I'm supposed to be me. Not like you have a clue who I am anyway.
The way Allen drops her head, again a minute gesture, says volumes about her supportive feeling for the girl, her inability to intercede, her love for her husband, and the impossible angst of teenage girls growing into womanhood before their mother's understanding yet impotent eyes. External performance. The cause of the character actor's focus on small performance is in part the hierarchy and social structure of filmmaking, because of which equal consideration before the lens is not afforded to all actors. The star, who is typically trading more upon a personality than a performance, makes a persona available for exchange at the box office, and thereby promises to deliver a profitably large audience. Consequently, it is the star who is accorded most of the screen time, and it is also the star who is in the political position to leverage flattering close-ups and the best angles. Character actors, if directors do not bend to give them attention, must make do with what we might call residual screen time, and are therefore almost always in the position of having to make a great deal out of a single shot or combination of shots. All screen actors, however, regardless of their position in the hierarchy, face an interesting occupational challenge because the equipment of filmmaking is not in their charge. To put this differently, the actor's access to the audience is mediated by the camera, a device which is controlled not by his expressivity, but by the needs of the production. Consider a central scene in Nicholas Heitner's The Crucible, in which Allen's eyes and silences so totally convey what she is thinking about that in a kind of transcendent engagement with the screen, we know what she will say just as she begins to say it.
How will I prove what you told me, Elizabeth? We were alone together. I have no proof of what you said.
You were alone with her.
For a moment alone,
told me.
And for a moment, his older brother's close by.
Who is it you're saying?
Woman, I'll not have no suspicion anymore.
No, John, if it were not Abigail that you must go to her, would you falter now? I think not.
You will not judge me more, Elizabeth. I forgot Abigail.
And I.
Spare me, you forget nothing and forgive nothing. In the 7 months since she has gone, I have not moved from there to there without acting to please you, but an everlasting funeral still marches round your heart.
John, you are not open with me. You saw her with the crowd, you said. Now you
see.
John, I'm only...
I should have rolled you down when first you told me no suspicion, but I willed it, and like a Christian I confessed. But you're not God, Elizabeth! That you look for some goodness in me. And judge me not.
The magistrate sits in your heart that judges you.
Here is exemplified the fact that no matter who is acting for camera, no matter the efforts any actor makes, no matter the actor's sensitivities to other actors' styles, his acute feeling for dramatic space, and his gestural and expressive range, still, most of a screen performance is constructed not from within but from without, by light and lens, by camera angle, by the position of a shot in the final edited film. In this case, note how the lighting and slight wide-angle lens show off Allen's pallid and seductive green eyes. The actor does not shape the lighting or equip the camera. She must respond to them. Actors have to learn to be concerned about what lens is being used in a given shot. Their expressions in a 6 or 8 millimeter lens won't work as they do in a 50 or in a very long lens situation. Often in filmmaking, part of what an actor tries to do is obscured or enhanced by a lighting pattern established to favor someone else. And one could spend hours discussing the way the editor can shape an actor's work on screen by cutting into the rhythm of a performance or even eliminating whole aspects of it, not to say cutting the crucial exhalation that ends a speech or the flow of breathing that initiates one. The screen action is thus built out of collaboration between actor and director, actor and cinematographer, actor and editor, and so on. A tiny character moment can be affected through shot placement, for example, as we can see in Francis Ford Coppola's Tucker the Man in His Dream, where a virtually Kulishovian editorial placement of 2 portrait shots, one on either side of something outside, that is definitive and that the character actor cannot control, brings clarity and emphasis to a tiny character bit.
Well, think about it. What do I say?
It being the editor's job to facilitate the smooth telling of the story that involves and revolves around the principles in a film, relatively marginal action, just such action as the character actor is involved in, might be abandoned more peremptorily in the final edit than would be ideal for showing the character actor at her very best. In each film, then, the character actor must work to make the finest possible contribution, yet the fragmentary nature of the final edited performance means that even while working on it intensively, no character actor can reliably count on any particular film to bolster her career. A nice example of this conundrum is given in Coppola's Peggy Sue Got Married, where it is easy to see Joan Allen just building up to a revealing moment, when quite abruptly she is cut from the action.
Adeline Hutton and Arthur Nagel were high school sweethearts. Married right after graduation, they're still together. Maddie, Arthur, how does it feel to have missed the sexual revolution?
What? What kind of question is that? That doesn't have anything to do with the reunion, Dolores. Arthur,
Take it easy.
Allen's character is not central to the movement of the main action, even though she potently fleshes out her performance in its abbreviation. Because of the contingent nature of film acting, then, the character actor must learn to be open and relaxed in performance, and especially so since she has fewer shots in which to frame the character that will be her calling card as a career worker. Always wholly immersed in a choreography of moves, tics, muscular responses, facial expressions, pauses, enunciations, gazes, and so on, she is yet never certain which of these will turn out to be telltale in the final edit of the film. To call this way of acting passive would be wrong, but to think of it as beat, on the beat and of the beat, might not. It is necessary to relax entirely into the character, not to intend expression too zealously, since the camera is capable of reaching out to take displays regardless of the actor's intent. Rehearsal is therefore not the very best preparation for the character part, while meditation and concentration are. To work effortfully at a production when the final result is in the hands of others who may have no particular regard for one's labor or one's career is difficult under any circumstances, but to work brilliantly and with persisting skill at such an effort is a supreme accomplishment, a kind of existential presence. Once in a while, to be sure, the character actor is handed the limelight and may comfortably play within a bounded space, as we can see in Pleasantville, in a little textbook lesson on timing and the use of props.
Actually, I'm not hungry.
Nonsense, young lady. You're in something we have for the next breakfast. Sit down. There's some pancakes, eggs, sausage, there's bacon, and of course, a ham steak. You eat all that, and it's right off the spoon.
But generally, the weight of the character performance is established through its balance with that of a star, around whose actions the character player's bits are organized in counterpoint, as we see in this celebrated scene from Paul Greengrass's The Bourne Ultimatum, showing Pam Landy, a creation Ms. Allen calls one of the absolutely hardest characters I've ever played. She claims that she had no idea how to understand someone who worked with numbers and codes all day long, because her mind doesn't make any sense out of numbers or codes when she goes through life. So getting into the mind of Pam Landy was really hard for her, but she did an incredible job.
I wanted to thank you for the tape.
Was that official?
No, off the record.
Tracy, this 50 seconds, Tracy. Goodbye.
Wait. David, what?
It's your name. You're born 4/15/71 in Houston, Missouri. Where'd you get into the combat?
Very wrong here.
Security emergency, we have an imminent threat.
Go on there. I'll show myself.
Jason Bourne is alive and is at large in New York City, and we believe within 1,000 yards of this building.
What what, Allen wondered, preparing this performance, was all this machination in which she was involved, and who was she really? In a curious way, character performance needs to be natural, not natural in that no construction or manipulation is involved, but natural in that the actor must be thoroughly at home with the character being played so that the performance happens as a direct manifestation of the actor's presence, an expression of a sense of the moment. In the case of Pam Landy, what Allen caught and fully digested, what she was at home with, was precisely confusion, that code numbers and technological jargon and strange street directions are in fact totally arcane and mysterious to her. So it is that in the performance we can come to realize that confusion, disorientation, doubt, and disinformation are precisely the core and quality of Pam Landy's life. To try to exhibit an appearance is futile when one is working in a medium where appearance is negotiated through a power structure and produced through the actions of experts. One must just somehow be. Finally, the acting tradition. Given the competition for work and the dependence of actors upon the success of earlier performances that they cannot have controlled entirely on their own, part of being good at what one does is having the luck to be well treated by others, even in the face of putting one's heart and soul into the focus that is necessary in character work. The last time Joan Allen actually had to audition for a role was for Pleasantville. This hardly means her work gets easier or that her future success has been guaranteed, since in every performance she is perforce vulnerable to the labor of colleagues who might have an incompetent moment or might be aiming for a different emphasis on the screen. Allen is not only good in front of the camera then, but also in her working relations with colleagues on the set. She knows how to be sensitive to what others are asking of her and has built a career in which her collaborators are very often sensitive to her ideas and needs. In this, she is hardly alone, but joins with cohorts of other talented character players, not only of today, but also and importantly of the golden age of Hollywood. She fits into a tradition, a gathering of forces that is of signal worth not only to her, but also to the actors who watch and evaluate her work today. Any film lover watching Allen can see her performances linked to those of Alice Brady, Gail Sondergaard, Jean Dixon, Kathleen Freeman, Thelma Ritter, Patricia Colling, Diane Baker, Jessica Tandy, Gladys Cooper, Agnes Moorehead, and Angela Lansbury, but might not know of their somewhat more deliberate connection to the work of actors Allen passionately admires: Geraldine Page in Trip to Bountiful, Shirley Booth in Come Back Little Sheba, Robert Duvall for his restraint, Katharine Hepburn, who inspired her most as a kid, Vivian Leigh, and the chameleonic Robert Downey Jr. While the films Joan Allen makes have a different style than the films of these luminaries, and while her films occupy an entirely different space in our popular consciousness, still it is true that her work also takes its place on the very same screen as the work of actors who went before. The history of Hollywood is alive and present for those who take it seriously. To give just one example, there's a line of connection between Agnes Moorehead, frozen with hopelessness, as she listens to her stiff and uncontrollable nephew in the kitchen in Orson Welles' The Magnificent Ambersons, 1942, and Allen's frozen desperation at a key moment in The Ice Storm.
Well, I'm sure your father and I would love to hear what you plan these days. Maybe after dinner?
It's that posture. This is a historical inheritance, not a willful imitation. But it places Allen in a great tradition whereby her work is illuminated by that of actors who went before. What she brings that is wholly original is a certain glow, a delicate and touching presence that leaves us convinced her characters have contacted us physically. Through this touch, we gain a sense of her acute consciousness and simple honesty, a sense that, as she puts it herself, she is very empathetic, like a sponge, and also a prevailing realization of her real hunger for the actuality of experience. Stay fresh in the moment is her watchword. Don't predict or think too hard. And that moment in which one stays fresh is both tenuous, a few seconds during a shot, and long-lasting. the moment of extended screen presence from the earliest days of cinema through the glorious 1930s and 40s, the spectacular 1950s, and all the way up to the exciting but frenetic pause in which we sit huddled in the movie theater today. In both the shorter and the longer moments, Joan Allen stays perpetually fresh. We can see this perhaps most powerfully in some of her early screen work, particularly in Manhunter. The marvelous presence of those eyes and that hand, the surprise, the caught stillness that seems to explode out of the screen into our experience and memory, and hers, since she recalls this shot still today as though it were made yesterday. Here we see not only a character coming alive, but also an actress experiencing a powerful aesthetic charge. The tiger was real, anesthetized, its fur a little coarser than she thought it would be. They shot for hours. We're seeing evidence of a real experience, transformed by Allen's genuineness and by the agency of cinema into a character's live sensation. Here and always, with motion pictures, the moment can be everything. Thank you.